Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tom is going to be one of 32 authors at the Fall Book Festival taking place on October 18th in downtown Greer at the historic Greer Depot, which is a beautiful venue.
I'm really looking
Uh,
forward to seeing it. I've had family who lived in Greer.
and I say, I absolutely love this venue. I fell in love with it as soon as I walked through the doors. Um, but I love trains. So there's that.
Right.
Um, You have books written biography, history, and military is what the genres that you had selected.
Mhm.
So tell us all about your books and what you're going to be bringing.
Okay, well, I guess, start from the beginning. The first one. Um, let's see, whoops. All right, can you see that?
Yep, right there.
Okay, Carnival Destruction. And an interesting story behind that. I started that just before I met my wife. I'm a bookaholic. I was trying to figure out a way, okay, how can I subsidize my book buying habit? So I said, I'll write magazine articles. And that it was intended to be a magazine article. And eventually it was in 2004.
That's a little bit bigger than a magazine article.
Yeah, it actually was a magazine article in Blue Gray
Oh,
Magazine.
okay.
But the book came out 12 years ago,
Okay.
18 years of research, well, 15 years of research, and then 3 years post production. Over 500 sources, like
Wow.
600, what was it, 200,000 words, 2,000 footnotes, 600 pages,
Mm.
and one proofreader who had a nervous breakdown. And that is really not a joke. They really did.
Oh, wow.
And resigned. And they were the senior proofreader for the company. But
Oops.
it was the first book to ever discuss Sherman's March to South Carolina, or as I like to call it, the first federally funded urban renewal program for the state, from Savannah to Cheraw and everywhere in between. I originally wanted to write a little bit about the burning of Columbia, and the burning of Columbia is the center focus of the book. But I talk about the Battle of Aiken and Rivers Bridge, Cheraw, and a few other things that happened in between, and all that. And I look and I dig into the controversy over who is responsible for the burning of Columbia. It was for centuries, it was a he says account. However, in my research, I found some things that had not been previously published in discussing the burning of Columbia. Like there was a POW camp outside of Columbia called Camp Sorghum,
Hmm.
and two soldiers said that the have accounts where they said Columbia was burned in retaliation for sorghum. And then my favorite is in Columbia. If I don't know how familiar you are with Columbia, but between Assembly Street and the river, this area now on Gervais is called the Vista. Well, back in the 1800s, it was called Hell's Half Acre. And it was
Hmm.
Columbia's red light district. I didn't know it was called Hell's Half Acre until after I published the book. I wish I had known that then. That's a great title, and if I ever opened a bar there, that's what I would call it. But there was a house of ill fame that's actually in the census record. And according to this one Union soldier account, and then after the book came out several years later, I found another account by a Union soldier that's pretty much substantiated the first claim that the fire that burned Columbia started in that area over a dispute over services rendered or perhaps not rendered. And that's all I'm going to say in a family friendly presentation. Use your imagination.
That's hilarious. They
Yeah.
burned a town down for possibly services not rendered.
But I tell people there wasn't a conspiracy to burn Columbia. It was conspiracies in the plural, on the company, regimental, maybe in brigade level. It's
Mhm.
so there's no doubt in my mind. I put out the case right there why I think it was done by the Union Army, and nobody's been able to argue against me yet. I'm sure. And one of the things I've tried to do in the book, and all my historical writings, is try to use the old Fox News slogan, fair and balanced. And the fact that I've had people who criticize the book, which has won awards, for being too soft on the Confederates and too soft on the Union means that I must have done my job right if I get both sides upset.
Yeah, when both sides complain, you know you did good.
Right.
I love it.
Mhm. So that was kind of the one that sort of the from which all my other works have sort of emerged from. Is if you want to do a family tree, that would be the top of the tree. Second, the second one, which is a side project, okay,
Columbia Civil
Civil
War.
War landmarks, right? This one's
Ah.
this one's pretty self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little side project I did while finishing up Carnival. There were a lot of stuff I wish I could have put, but I had enough stuff already in there. I mean, it's where do you cut? And so I put it into a separate book, and I list 60 landmarks in the Greater Columbia area that people can go and see. Some are open to the public. Most of the others, you can at least see from the road.
Okay.
And we talk about houses, buildings. My favorite story is there's a house in Columbia on the corner of Blanding and Bull Street. It's the Crawford Clarkson house, and it's a unique house because unlike a lot of Columbia's houses, which of that era, which are sort of a Greco-Roman design,
Mm-hmm.
this one was more of a New England salt box. The owner had glass columns because he was a botanist. Well, when the soldiers came to Columbia, they had a mammy who convinced the soldiers that she had been given the house by the owner, so that's how the house survived, according to family lore. But
Hmm.
even the better story, and I've actually found documentation that this story is true, is the owner had a very fine white horse, and he decided he wanted to save his horse. And he decided that he was going to save it by putting it in the second floor of a wooden house surrounded by burning buildings. Um, and the horse survived. And I was telling this story one day to a group of school kids, and a little boy came up to me and said, "Mr. Elmore," I said, "Yes. I have a question about that horse." I said, "Sure, go ahead." He said, "Did that horse poop on the floor?"
Chances are pretty good, yes.
Yeah, that's what I said.
That- That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I tell that story all the time. I do PowerPoint presentations on the Burning Columbia and all, and I always make a point to tell that story, and it always gets a chuckle. But,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there's a lot still in Columbia if you know where to look and how to look. There's a sort of a boulder monument to where the sea was surrendered,
Mm.
north of the old city limits, and I can't tell you how many times I've done a tour or done a presentation. And someone says, "I go by there every day. I never knew it was there."
Ah,
Yeah, so
now I know where I have to go.
yeah, exactly.
My
It's
my
like
tour, places to go in Colombia.
mhm. Well, it's like I tell people all the time. I think one of the things I've done with Carnival and my other writings is I brought tales and stories out into the 21st century, screaming and kicking, sometimes literally, all the way. Uh, when I was doing Carnival, the University of South Carolina, Thomas Cooper Library has the rare book room, or that's why they called it then. It's something else now, but Francis Lord, who was a professor at USC and also was on the U.S. Civil War Centennial Commission back in the 1960s, donated his collection of about 4,000 or 5,000 books about the war, many of them first-hand accounts
Wow.
from the Union perspective. And I went in there and used it a lot, and I am convinced I was probably the first person in decades to have cracked open a lot of these books.
Mm,
So yeah, I
that'd
brought
be
lots of
interesting
stories
reading.
out that nobody
Mm.
had heard of before. So I take pride in that. Okay, the next one, this is also kind of a side project. And if I wish I had called this 50 Shades of Blue and Gray. It's a real life story about Marie Boozer and her mother Amelia Feaster. And when I was researching Carnival, I kept finding all kinds of references to Marie Boozer. In fact, I think I found more art stuff about her than I have about some generals who fought in that war. And she was my first magazine sale. I wrote an article about her. Actually, that's one of the times I did sell a magazine piece to subsidize my book habits.
Mhm.
And I have to say, like I said, it took 15 years of research, but the internet, what's available on the internet today wasn't around back then. In fact, the internet wasn't even there. I tell people all the time, what's available today online existed when I started. It would not have taken me as long to write Carnival. I would have sliced that time at least half, if not more. But I could talk. I could make a talk about how technology changed just in the process of that book.
Mhm.
But anyway, back to the Scandalous Lives. Um, Marie Boozer was the subject of numerous newspaper stories and magazine articles all across the country in the late 1800s, and the subject of two romance novels in the 1950s. Her mother was a black widow. She was married three times and widowed three times before she was 35.
Wow.
Husband number one died the day after the wedding.
Oh, jeez.
Husband number two was allegedly murdered. Husband number three blew the left side of his head off with a double barrel shotgun.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, the story gets more interesting. Amelia Feaster, that was her name. She was originally from Philadelphia. Um, her third husband was David Boozer from Newberry, and Boozer was a very successful farm owner and hotel owner. And soon after he died, the old saying, came in a taxi, left in a limo. That's kind of what Amelia did. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, she after his dad went to Columbia, did a huge buying spree, came back and was kicked out of the church for conduct under becoming a widow. I don't want to give away too much, but she did remarry. She married a Colombian merchant, Jacob Feaster,
Mhm.
and she definitely aided and abetted with the prisoners at Camp Sorghum from escaping, and some other things I don't want to talk about. Marie was considered the most beautiful woman in South Carolina by many. Um,
Hmm.
she was very soft. There was reportedly she was engaged to the son of General Wade Hampton at one time. Um, as far as her intelligence, there's various accounts. Some say she was fluent in speech. Some say she was just pretty to look at. But like I said, in the but there were books that wrote all kinds of crazy stories about her life, that she was had an affair with fill in the blank nobleman in Thailand, China, Japan, and a Zulu war chief, and that
Wow.
she was caught cheating, and they had her head cut off,
Ooh.
with the Zulu war chief doing one other extra step. He shrunk her head and wore it. In reality, she died peacefully in Italy, but the book is also, I take credit, because it's the only Civil War related book that mentions Krakatoa. Because she was on the island of Krakatoa, island of Java, the day Krakatoa exploded. And there's
Hmm.
actually her account of the explosion I cite in the book. But there's
Mhm.
so many crazy stories and tales about her. In the Man Who Shot Liberty Balance, they said, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. That's what a lot of people have done for years. And mine was the first time to actually try to write a straight, honest, straightforward account that tried to cut through all the lies, legends, BS, and tell the story as it is. But there was so much of the legend that I just simply had to put a separate chapter that dealt just with that. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's really a crazy story. And one thing I should add is that Amelia, right after the war, she left with Sherman's army. She and Marie, and they went to New York City, stayed at the Astor House, and the mayor of Columbia came to see her, and she asked him to sign a document saying her husband was dead, so she could collect some sort of money from the federal government. And he said, "I can't do it." She said, "Why?" He said, "I just saw him 3 days ago." And her so-called dead husband outlived her by about 20 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't dead after all.
And then this book, Pirate's Ray. Trying to see. Okay, got it.
Ah.
Yeah. Well, Pirate's Ray is my best-selling book. It's really in many ways a sequel to Carnival.
Mhm.
When Sherman was in Girard, he sent a cavalry on a raid to Florence to try to destroy railroad equipment. Well, the raid was a bust. There was more Confederate resistance than they expected, and the Union troops literally ran all the way back to Cheraw. So 2 weeks later, he's in Fayetteville, and apparently it's still under his skin that it didn't happen. So he sends orders to Charleston, which was now occupied by the Union Army and Navy, saying, I want you to send troops to destroy that railroad equipment. I don't care if you had to burn down Charleston to free up the troops. That don't mean anything to me. I want that equipment. Really, there was no need to do that at this point, the equipment. And I'm sure nobody had any desire to burn down Charleston after spent so much time trying to capture it. But they sent a small division led by Edward Potter. And it's interesting the raid because the 54th Massachusetts, which was the subject of the movie Glory, they were in the
Mhm.
raid. And the last Union officer killed in the war, who was an officer in the 54, um, died at Boykin Mill outside Camden. Um, the, so and much of it took place right after Lee had surrendered and after Lincoln had died. So it was the last campaign, and it's been my biggest selling book. And the
Mhm.
reason being is, as I tell people, is that people had heard about Potter's Raid, but no one had ever know anything about it, and for good reason. I wrote the very first narrative account. Someone wrote like a little scrapbook type book about it in the 90s, but mine's the first actual narrative. And so it's been my biggest seller, and I'm proud of the fact that, it took 150 years for little someone, little me was the first one to do it. And it came out just in time, literally came out just days. We got just days before the commemoration of the event.
Oh.
So I was happy, and yeah, I said it's an interesting tale. It's not a big fancy story like the Gettysburg campaign or some of the others, but it still is interesting
Mhm.
in its own right. And they went from they came to Georgetown, went to Manning, went to Sumter, and then went to Camden, and came back. And eventually, they found what they were looking for at Manchester State Park now, or the bombing range by the Air Force at Shaw Air Force Base, and that was it.
Mhm.
So it's kind of an interesting little story. And then last but not least, Celtic Columbia. And,
Oh.
and this was a labor of love. I'm the state historian for the Ancient Order of Hibernians, Irish Catholic fraternal group. And one of the things when doing the research on Carnival and some of the others is I discovered there was a large Irish presence in Columbia on the eve of the Civil War. About 10% of the city's population was Irish or Scottish by birth or by blood. And
Hmm.
there were three predominantly Irish neighborhoods in the city before the war. And it was literally burned off. When you see that famous picture of Main Street, Columbia from the State House,
Mhm.
you're looking at an area that was called um, New Dublin. No, Little Dublin, excuse me. It wasn't New Dublin, Columbia, where the Carolina Coliseum is. Little Dublin was for a business district. And so I talk about the history, the first recorded Irishmen to come to the Midlands were in the 1830s. So we've had almost, no, excuse me, 1730s. So we've had almost 300 years of a Celtic presence in the
Mm.
Midlands. So I talk, and there was a number of Irish-born stonemasons who built the state house here and all that. And it's just a little kind of fascinating story. And of course, it's now that kind of led me down some other rabbit holes. As a state historian for the AOH, I have been locating Irish American sites across the state. And so far, I found 250.
Wow.
And yeah, and when I discovered that about one third to one quarter of them were related to the American Revolution, well, I veered off and went down the rabbit hole, which I'm working on now. Trying to get doing that together. I'm still researching and working on that, but I have found 370 men born in Ireland who fought in Revolutionary War regiments in South Carolina. So,
Hmm.
it's something no one else has done. So, and it's also this whole story kind of gives you how my mind tends to operate. It's like I tell people, I don't come to the subject. The subject comes to me. It seems like.
Okay.
And another thing too, I find also along the way, it's kind of weird. And I've talked to other historians and researchers, and they tell me it's true. Often you reach a point where you don't look for where the research will also come to you unexpectedly. A case in point, I was trying to find who burned the old wooden state house in Columbus,
Mhm.
and I looked for years, couldn't find any reference. Okay, must have been an accident. Then one day I was at the South Carolina Library at USC, and looking at something totally unrelated, and I discovered a letter that they had there by a soldier from Ohio who claimed credit. I said, and of course, it was like I felt like I won the holy, the jackpot, found the holy grail. So I mean, so anyway, so I mean, that's one of the things too that happens with it. But you know, a good friend of mine who just passed away, Eric Wittenberg, probably the leading expert on Civil War cavalry, once said that we were alike and that we both look for niche subjects. And I agree. I agree. I mean, it's like someone said, "Why don't you write about Gettysburg?" I said, "There's been 10,000 books about Gettysburg. We don't need another book about Gettysburg unless someone finds a long lost document or diary from somebody." So that's it. You know, I look for something different, something challenging, and I also write. You know, Chuck Jones once said that when he made his cartoons, he didn't make it for children; he made them for himself, and I think that's me as well. I write to please myself. I am, by any stretch of the imagination, my own toughest critic. You can just ask my wife if you don't believe me.
Well, awesome. I absolutely love history, and just, learning all of the history that is in South Carolina, um, be it in the Midlands, be it upstate.
Hmm.
Um, I just find it so interesting. There's so much that has happened in the state and the states surrounding that you've got a lot of material to work with.
Well, especially the Revolution here in South Carolina, the upstate. I mean, you know, about 5 years we'll be commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Kings Mountain and Cowpens, two of the most
Hmm.
important battles of the American Revolution. Of course, next year is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, on which South Carolina had four signers, two of whom were Irish Americans, I might add. One of whom, if you have a signature, you're rich. Name was Thomas Lynch Jr., and he died about 3 years after signing the document when he lost at sea going to France for his health. And a couple of years ago, a partial signature of his went for 21,000, and I found where
Wow.
a full signature went for over 100,000. So yeah, it's considered the rare signature of any signer.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I have actually been to the Battle of Cowpens, the field over there,
Right.
and it's got a great drive through where you can drive through and listen to what
Mhm.
happened there, and just there's so much history in this area, and for you to bring it into various books and sharing that information is
Mhm.
just phenomenal.
Oh
So
yeah.
you're working on one project. Do you
Actually,
see
two, but
Oh, 2 projects. Okay.
not to
So
mention, I also right now I'm trying to finish up a little blog piece.
I love it.
Mm.
So when you do all this writing, are you outlining it? Are you a plotter, or are you putting things together and just how does that all come together? Because fiction typically is in a plotter or pantser type of scenario,
Mhm.
whereas you're working with true facts. So how does that all come together?
Well, with Carnival and Potter, and I guess and to a certain degree with the Boozer book, I try to keep it in chronological order. What happened? I mean, not Carnival was a bit difficult because I had so many different places where things were happening.
Hmm.
We had Washington, we had Richmond, we had Charleston, we had Columbia. You had you had Sherman's army, which was actually two armies in the field, and then Confederate forces, and so had bounce back and forth and try to keep that. I wanted to put in a little timeline in the back of the book to
Mm,
to help people who keep track of everything, and did that with Potter as well. I really don't plan out. I mean, in my mind, I know what I want to do, and so I just
mhm.
go with that, and then I I'll change it, play it up as I go along. I did. I guess you could say I play it by Zen, or I use the Force. I mean, I mean, I really don't. I'm not that structured of a writer. I go with the feeling in it.
Okay.
I
So in the land of fiction, that
mm,
would be more of a pantser than a plotter, which
mhm,
to me I find very interesting.
mhm,
So you've got two pieces you're working on plus a blog post.
mhm.
What do you see coming down the pike for you, and or are you just going to let things come along as they appear?
Well, actually, last night in a dream, I got an idea for my next project.
Oh.
But but really, I always like to say, yeah, after I get done, I'm going to go. I always like to say I'm going to wait 6 months before I start something else, and take a long nap. I never have. So yeah, I'm just going to go with the flow, see what happens. Of course, I'm also very busy doing events like the upcoming book festival in the fall. The last 2 years, I've done 30, no, 64 events. Either
Wow.
either speaking to historic groups or going to events like y'all's or other markets and stuff, selling,
Mhm.
promoting, trying to hustle books. I mean, one of the things you may have seen this yourself, that gets me is I've often gone to a lot of book events, festivals, fairs, whatever, and I
Mhm.
felt like I was the only professional writer there. A lot of times, the only nonfiction writer there, but that's another story. Because a lot of people, it seems to me, they're there to be seen. Look at me, I'm a writer, ain't I
Mhm.
grand? And they spend all their time socializing, and I'm there. And I'm one of those who stick till I don't leave early. I stick to the very end.
Mhm.
I'm always trying to hustle and sell books. I mean, that's what I'm there for to do, to sell. Yes, I don't mind socializing and being with other people. I'm not that, but that's
Mhm.
not that's not the only thing I'm going to do. So,
Well, and that is the one thing that a as a coordinator, I love to hear is that your whole purpose of going to the event is to sell books.
yeah.
So I absolutely love hearing that because that is the purpose of the event is to I I want readers to connect, not only connect with authors on a personal level, but to actually buy the books. And and we've got 32 authors. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if you are the only nonfiction writer, because we have 48 genres that are represented.
Mm,
So
mm,
I don't have all of them
mm.
memorized.
I mean, I went to this one event, and the person never sat at their table the whole time I was there, and then wound up leaving early. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I'm going like, well, then why the hell were you here, lady? I mean, I didn't say that, but that was in my mind.
Right.
I had to tell you my all time favorite book event stories.
Okay.
Um, Doing one at the Richland Library,
Mhm.
and some guy, an older gentleman, came up to me and said, showing my Civil War books, and said, "Is this the same book? Is this from the same period as the movie The Patriot?" Um, Now, if it been a small child, I would have laughed, said, "Okay, that's fine, no problem." I just shook my head, told him no, and shook my head. I said, "Okay, that's got to be the dumbest question of the day." I was wrong.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
a couple,
They outdid themselves that day.
no one outdid themselves. Another grown adult, a young, I was telling someone probably in their 20s, a man came up at me and said, Did you interview any of the participants for your books? For the record, the last recognized veteran of the Civil War died in 1959. Even before my time. Yeah, I sort of wish I said, yeah, I got a
Oh,
Ouija board out, and I,
oh,
again, if it's a small child, I would just laugh.
that is awesome. Did you personally interview them? Wow.
Well, it's like with Pirates Ray. I mentioned the 54 of Massachusetts, and I was talking to a newspaper reporter. He said, I thought they were all killed at the end of glory. But I have a friend who
Well,
I have a friend who
this
worked.
is where books come into play.
Yeah, I have a friend who was a park ranger at Gettysburg. She said that two of the most common questions they got there was, how come so many Civil War battles took place at national parks, and how did the monuments survive the battle?
Oh no.
Oh yeah,
Um,
and I heard that later. I heard the same thing from another park ranger.
wow. Of all the questions that I thought they would be asked, those did not come to mind.
Yeah, well, where's the restroom is number one.
Well, of course. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's just sad. And how do they keep a straight face when people ask those?
Well,
I
having
would have a hard time.
having dealt with the public for years, I can tell you that there is a new level of stupidity in this world. It's called people who are so stupid they don't know they're stupid.
That's been going on actually for quite a few years, unfortunately.
Yeah,
That's not a new phenomena
yeah,
because I used to work retail.
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
But yeah, and that's where getting people to read and and one of the major factors in our book festival is I want to make sure that we have as big a variety so that we can, you know, to me, it's not just about the fiction, but also about the nonfiction
Mm,
and getting people to read, getting people to turn off that TV, put away the devices,
mm.
and really see what's out there.
But you know, a
And
lot of people when
so,
the Harry Potter series came out, you know, you heard all these people complain, "Oh, it's about wizards and magic. It's evil and satanic." I'm saying it's getting the kids to read. You
yeah,
know, so what if it give them some credit for their intelligence?
mm-hmm.
You know, I read The Exorcist when I was before I was a teenager. My mom my mom asked me how about it. I said it's boring. And I really the movie was better. It actually was. And when I come up there, remind me to tell you my Exorcist story. It's
Oh,
a good one.
well, I am certainly looking forward to having you at our event.
Mm,
There's going to be 32 authors. We've got 48 genres, and I think around 175 book titles that are going to be there. So, certainly, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be there, lots of variety, something for everyone. And I encourage them to come by your table and learn more about South Carolina and the history.
mm.
It is so rich in history. But thank you for taking some time out of your day to come on here and share about your books.
My pleasure.
Thank you,
I
and
really enjoyed it.
I will see you in October.
All right. Looking forward to it.